Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, everyone. Got a big show for you here from the ETV Community Media Center. Man, Roki Sasaki made his decision last night, and the baseball world has been on fire ever since. There's been some crazy storylines and rumors about certain remaining free agents, but we start with a little bit of a somber note here, as longtime baseball legend and Brewers announcer Bob Uecker passed away at the age of 90 years old. He was going to be 91 here about a week. And it was a really sad day for the game of baseball. But as we talked about, a while ago with Willie Mays, he lived an incredible life, not just in terms of years. I mean, living 9 decades is a blessing. I count every single day, and every single day that I wake up a win. 9 decades of life is fantastic, but the way that Bob Uecker spent his 9 decades of life was truly admirable. It was truly something that was storybook-esque, and I just want to, recap some of the highlights that I'm sure you guys have been seeing in many posts throughout the week since the news of his passing. Bob Uecker started off his, fame as a baseball player. He hit 14 career home runs and was a 200 career hitter, so right on the Mendoza line. He, was a World Series champion as the backup catcher for the 1964 St. Louis Cardinals. Started his career with the Milwaukee Braves, playing with the likes of Hank Aaron and Warren Spahn and Eddie Matthews. And he just had a really, nice time playing in the majors. He's very joking throughout his entire professional life of how average of a baseball player he was. But those 14 career home runs don't sound like much for a guy that played, 8 years in Major League Baseball. But 3 of those home runs came off of Fergie Jenkins, Hall of Famer, Gaylord Perry, Hall of Famer, and the left arm of God, Sandy Koufax, who not only gave up a home run to Uecker, but also intentionally walked him in a game, which Uecker has said multiple times is the biggest honor of his Major League Baseball career. It's the coolest thing that happened to him as a player, was Sandy Koufax intentionally walked him. And to have a guy that has stories like that has the experience like that around today, it was truly a blessing, and I hope a lot of you appreciated what we had before it was gone in that respect, with the stories that Uecker was able to tell as the Brewers announcer since the 70s. He's been involved with the team and has done a fantastic job, both making fun of himself as well as recalling on baseball history and exploits and stories. But then there's Bob Uecker, the man, because after his playing career was over, he was in PR for a major league for the Braves. He was then a scout for the Brewers before getting the radio job. And after being, a PR rep, a scout, he had weekly visits on the Johnny Carson show. He was a minor celebrity, a guy that was known for his humor, and it was a big part of the reason why he got his break in radio and sports casting. And he went on to become so popular that he was a main character here on the mid-'80s sitcom Mr. Belvedere. He played a character named George Owens, and Mr. Belvedere was about a guy who was a sports writer turned announcer, which is kind of fitting for the career that Bob Uecker took on over the years. And after Mr. Belvedere, he got his role that a lot of people from my generation know him from in Major League, where he was the announcer for the Cleveland team in those movies, the Major League movies, and his very famous call of a pitch that was extremely out of the strike zone and, hit the backsplash just a bit outside. He was trying to hit the corner and he missed it. Absolutely hilarious guy who brought that kind of energy to everything he did in life, from TV to movies to being an ambassador for the game of Major League Baseball. He was inducted into the Radio Hall of Fame in 2001. He received the prestigious Ford Frick Award in 2003. It was inducted into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame chapter of writers and broadcasters from the Ford Frick Award, and was entered into the Brewers Ring of Honor in 2009 for his service over 50 years in Major League Baseball. And they gave him that honor of being that guy. And outside of Vin Scully to the Los Angeles Dodgers, you could make a really good argument that Bob Uecker to the baseball city of Milwaukee is the most important baseball voice of the modern era. At least the post-integration era. And, he's gone. And I think a lot of Brewers players, current and former, knew at the end of this past season that, we might not have Uke for 2025 and beyond, because there was apparently a lot of tears following a Bob Uecker speech in the Brewers locker room following their playoff loss to the Mets during the postseason. And, even when something like this is coming, it's never easy. But Bob Uecker, lived every day to the fullest. He lived it with just humor and passion, and he will be dearly missed by the game of baseball and by life. But Bob Uecker truly took advantage of all 9 decades he had on this earth, and he lived every day to the fullest. And may he rest in peace. Now, speaking of the guy that, ended the Bob Uecker era of the Milwaukee Brewers, Pete Alonso, who hit that home run off of Devin Williams, he's still out there in free agency. And we're in a situation now that I don't know if we've ever seen before, where Scott Boras and his clients are begging for contracts. It has been reported by multiple sources that Pete Alonso has went over to the Mets and said, hey, I will take a 3-year deal for this amount of money, like take it or leave it, like kind of thing, because they're not interested in signing him to a 5, 6, 7-year deal and locking him up. But he wants to stay in New York, be a part of this team with Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor and Mark Vientos and all these talented players that the Mets are trying to push for, World Series championship for the first time since 1986. And then it comes out after this report that the Mets are just planning to move on from Pete Alonso and that they're going to their plan B. They signed Jesse Winker back the other day. He's a guy that'll DH and, might play a little corner outfield or a little first base. He has done both in his career, as well as, Mark Vientos being told that he's going to probably be the everyday first baseman over there in New York for 2025 with, either Beatty stepping up at third base or them trading for an Arenado or signing a Bregman. Still yet to be seen what happens, but it is shocking to me that Pete Alonso is still out there and having to beg for these kind of contracts. I know that he came out at the beginning of the offseason, and I know people have refuted this report, but I do think that Boras, with the way he operates, did put this out there, is that Alonso was looking for a Prince Fielder type deal, which was over $200 million. And I believe Fielder got like 9 years, 7, 8, 9 years on that contract. And Fielder was hitting free agency 2 years younger than Pete Alonso did. And he played in the bigger part of this is that Prince Fielder played in an era where a legitimate slugging first baseman was considered the cornerstone of a team, a cornerstone of a lineup. Now, with the analytical approach and launch angle and wins above replacement and defensive value, slugging first baseman, they still have value, but they are not the most valuable players on the team anymore. They are not the cornerstones of big league lineups. And despite Pete Alonso being, the face of the Mets in a lot of people's eyes the last handful of seasons. Him not being a, above average defender at his position, him not hitting for average and, playing the game the way he does, his value and where the Mets value him are very different right now. And it's really sad for Mets fans, for Alonso fans out there. The New York Mets are clearly a place that he would like to stay, but they are apparently, planning to move off of him. Now, if it gets to the point of a 1-year deal, I could not see him going anywhere else but back to the Mets. But I do think that he's going to sign very similar to a Matt Chapman and Blake Snell last year, a 2 or 3 year deal with an opt-out after the first year with a team like the Giants, who did that with Chapman last year, and I think that's a very, very likely situation is, seeing guys like Chapman and Snell, Alonso going to the Giants, which was my original prediction. I didn't think it was going to be on that kind of basis, but that seems very, very likely at this point. The Giants have been, finally name dropped in the Alonso sweepstakes, and they could use that power in that lineup desperately. So I hope to see him still go to a place that's good. I guess the benefit for Pete Alonso about this is if he signs one of those opt out of the first year deals, he doesn't get locked into a 7-year contract in a 6-7 year contract in San Francisco. And that could hurt his long-term home run numbers as a guy that, if he wants to make the Hall of Fame, he's got to push 500 home runs. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him. I understand he's not Prince Fielder. I understand it's not the same era, but the amount of teams that are acting like he is so replaceable, that he is not a star, is stunning to me. And the same can be said for Alex Bregman, whose market has been pretty dire as well. At the beginning of the offseason, very similar to the outlandish Prince Fielder thing, Bregman was cited to the original Manny Machado deal, which again was a player that hit free agency multiple years younger. We just saw with Juan Soto that timing of free agency is the most important thing, and hitting it as young as possible really helps. So Bregman was never going to get, Manny Machado money. He's not the same player. He was not as young. The era and ownership situation, with the Padres were throwing money around like crazy back then, is not the same. And Alex Bregman, he looks at the teams that are interested in him. Toronto, he has turned down. Detroit, which has the connection there, obviously, of his former manager, AJ Hinch, has been interested in him, but I'm sure that the number isn't what he wants, and that is a pitcher ballpark. And then the Red Sox have been rumored in this entire time, even though Alex Cora said multiple times that he feels like he's a Gold Glove second baseman, so they want to pay him like a second baseman, not a corner power hitter. His numbers at Fenway are fantastic. I do think Alex Bregman would look great in a Red Sox uniform and be a great leader for this team, a much-needed right-handed bat in the lineup. But I don't know where Bregman's going to go from here. Is he going to be another one of these guys that signs a shorter-term deal with an opt-out? Is he going to, just take the highest bidder and sign a 4 or 5 year deal? Alex Bregman, looks to be the kind of guy that wants to win. He's a guy who right now is in that Hall of Very Good conversation, but if he can, take a step up in his 30s, could push for the Hall of Fame, just in terms of where he is on a WAR basis. And, he gets another championship somewhere else. He raises the home run, RBI, runs scored numbers. He could be in that conversation, which a ballpark like Fenway, which he hits well in, could help him. But people are acting like Alex Bregman and Pete Alonso aren't stars. And I understand they're not stars in the same way of Shohei Ohtani, where teams are going to be throwing ad money and jersey sales are going to be through the roof and all these things. But they are star players in Major League Baseball. They're great players. And I understand, the term flawed free agent has been thrown out there a ton the last couple years. There's not really such a thing as a perfect free agent in today's game. And part of it is with, how long it takes players to hit free agency with arbitration and stuff. And the other part of it is, like Players might do a couple tools extremely well, but lack a fourth or fifth tool. And that's okay. Not every player is going to be a 5-tool MVP candidate player to be valuable to your team, to be a good player, to be a important part of your lineup. And guys like Bregman and Alonso being unsigned here on January 18th it's shocking to me. It's shocking to me. And I think Boris is a part of the problem. He started way too high with both of these guys, comping Fielder and Machado. And I think he's alienated parts of the market because there was plenty of teams that, missed out on Juan Soto that, would have given a reasonable contract, I think, to either of these guys. But he waited too long. Teams pivoted in other directions. And now the options, the possible landing spots have lowered. And I really hope that both these guys find home soon. It's good for their routine. We saw that it's not good when guys sign real late, right before spring training. So I hope they can get contracts in the next week or so, sign with teams, get comfortable. And if they get opt-outs after the first year, ball out in 2025 and hit free agency and remind people who they are going forward. But there is one guy that, some people were calling a perfect free agent. And that is Roki Sasaki, who, shockingly to everyone, was posted early at 23 years old from the Nippon League Marines. 23 years old. His fastball touches 102 miles per hour. He has been called by many the greatest pitcher of the Nippon era. And he came over to Major League Baseball early because, like Shohei Ohtani, he doesn't care about the money right away. He knows the money will come later, but he wants to compete against the best and wants to prove that he's not just the best pitcher in the Nippon era, but he's one of the best pitchers of this era, period. And he signs, to no shock to me or to really anyone, with the Los Angeles Dodgers. And the reason why a lot of people are up in airs and baseball Twitter is on fire is because Roki Sasaki met with 20 Major League Baseball teams this offseason. 20. I think all 30 Major League Baseball teams should have at least booked a meeting with this kid. He's that talented. And because he's coming over early, he is going to be making laughably small money his first 6 years in Major League Baseball for just his playing contract. Now, sponsorships and different things could raise that floor. But for those 6 years, his 20s, basically, he is not going to be making big time money. And he throws 102. He is very well revered in the World Baseball Classic run for Team Japan a couple years ago. He was dominant. He's a stud. He joins a Dodger rotation now with 2-time Cy Young winner Blake Snell, with efficiency king Tyler Glasnow. And obviously, is not going to be ready for opening day, but a return to the mound for Shohei Ohtani, a guy who's been a Cy Young candidate multiple times. And then, another Japanese pitcher, the highest paid pitcher in Major League Baseball, who came over from Japan last year, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who's becoming like the forgotten man, even though he's the highest paid pitcher on that staff. It's an embarrassment of riches. And that's before you get into Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May coming back from injuries to be depth pieces. I think Dustin May is going to be more of a bullpen piece to start, and Gonsolin's going to be that swingman fifth, sixth starter. Start the year probably in the rotation until Ohtani's ready, and then he'll bounce back and forth. And then Clayton Kershaw is 32 strikeouts away from 3,000. We all know he's going to sign back with the Dodgers. The question is just when. Is he waiting for someone to go down? Is he waiting for the Dodgers to clear space on the 40-man? Like, what is going through Clayton Kershaw's head right now? I don't know, but I think he wants to be a part of this team. It's an embarrassment of riches. There's still guys like Landon Knack who are going to spot start some times, and some quality depth coming up through the minor leagues for the Dodgers as well. It is an embarrassment of riches that the Dodgers have. And that's just in the rotation before you get into the lineup, which, retained Teoscar Hernandez this offseason, brought in Michael Conforto and Haesung Kim. it's a very, very deep, talented team that I told you when they won that World Series championship officially stamped themselves as a super team, and now they're hunting for the term dynasty. Some people are already going to say this is a dynasty. They need to win multiple championships with the same kind of core and leadership for it to be an official dynasty to me. But the reason I would tell all of the other 29 baseball fan bases to not panic, to not scorch earth, to not complain and hate on the Dodgers is twofold. First and foremost is no matter who you are a fan of, you should appreciate great baseball. Great baseball players, great baseball moments, and the Dodgers during this Ohtani run are clearly going to have multiple baseball moments and multiple baseball players that are worth celebrating. So I'm not going to knock them for being good. I've never done that once. Secondly, it's a marathon of a season, 162 games. Yes, I just listed a ridiculous rotation and a ridiculous lineup. Those guys aren't going to be healthy for 162 games a year every year. This isn't a video game. Even though it's a video game kind of lineup, it's not a video game. They will have some injuries. They will have some obstacles. On the World Series run last year, they were down to Yamamoto and Flaherty, and Walker Buehler, who was terrible during the regular season, was their number 3 starter in the postseason. So things can switch up real quick over the course of a marathon season. They're not going to win the World Series 10 years in a row during Ohtani's tenure, but they're going to be competitive. And that's why Ohtani started the trend, of big time deferred money, is so they can continue to add to this roster. And they've done nothing but that. And I respect the Dodgers for doing so. But it's a marathon of a season. Baseball's always had parity. And all it takes is getting into the postseason with the new wild card format to go on a run and to win a championship, even against the new evil empire Dodgers. So don't stress it too much. Enjoy this fantastic assemblance of talent that's out west right now. And like I said, I think teams are going to start following the model, much like they did with the Braves with signing players early. People are going to start deferring money, these big market teams, and finding ways to compete and extend windows. And I think it's going to be good for the game of baseball. The competitive marketing balance has been so off with the luxury tax era. And I want to see teams, doing their best to make the postseason. That's all I want to see. And, if the Dodgers have locked up one of those spots in the NL for the next 10 years, great. There's still another 5 spots for everyone else. So let's keep going. Let's keep rolling and appreciate Major League Baseball. Roki Sasaki is immediately going to be a favorite to win the 2025 National League Rookie of the Year, And the Rookie of the Year title to this episode, I think, is going to become a real tagline for his starts, a real tagline that, Major League Baseball and the Dodgers and different big time things post. I wanted to be first to market with that. And I think that Rookie of the Year thing is going to be awesome. I can't wait to see how he translates to Major League Baseball. There's always an adjustment. Yamamoto had his struggles last year, both staying healthy as well as pitching effectively, consistently. But I have big expectations for Yamamoto in year 2, and I can't wait to see what Sasaki brings to the table here in year 1. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we have to throw it back down the third baseline to this day in baseball history. And January 18th had quite a few moments here with some baseball birthdays, some signings, some trades. But there was a signing that is relevant to the last topic here. And on this date in 2005, 20 years ago, Carlos Beltran inked a 7-year deal with the New York Metropolitans. Carlos Beltran is one of the most disrespected players, I think, in history. And it's because of that 1 year at the end of his career where he became the scapegoat for the Houston Astros trash can scandal. And the reason he became a scapegoat is because he retired. So they didn't want to go after the active Major League Baseball players. So they went after him. Now, Beltran could have been the ringleader. He could have been the mastermind. He could have not been. But that 1 year of Carlos Beltran's career should not be withholding him from the Baseball Hall of Fame. And in his 6 full seasons with the New York Mets after signing this 7-year contract, his per 162 numbers with the Mets was 107 runs scored, 170 hits, 39 doubles, 29 home runs, 108 RBIs, 21 stolen bases, a 279 average, 366 on base, 499 slug, good for an OPS plus of 126. He was in very, very high regard during his time as a New York Met. He's one of the most talented players to don a Mets uniform. And when he gets inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame here on Tuesday, the 21st, he will be wearing a Mets cap on his Hall of Fame plaque. And it's not just because of those amazing regular season numbers, but also he had some amazing postseason runs with the New York Mets. And I know a lot of people like to hold that one moment against him, that called third strike against Adam Wainwright and the Cardinals to end that series, is what everybody likes to harp on and remember with Carlos Beltran. Well, the Mets wouldn't have been in that position without Carlos Beltran's heroics in the regular season and postseason. And Carlos Beltran, in his career for the playoffs, was a 307 hitter, 412 on base, 609 slug, good for 1,021 OPS, which was just outrageous. He walked more times than he struck out in the postseason. 16 postseason home runs, 42 RBIs. He did this as a switch hitter, the only switch hitters in Major League Baseball history that have more home runs than Carlos Beltran are Chipper Jones, or Eddie Murray, and obviously Mickey Mantle. 3 obvious first ballot Hall of Famers. Carlos Beltran should have been in the first ballot. He's served his punishment from the writers, and he's trending right now through the Baseball Hall of Fame tracker. Ryan Thibodeau and his team do a great job every year there. bbhof.com, tracker.com. You can go there and see the progress. There's been over 40% of ballots known, and Beltran is trending over that 75%. I think he gets in this year, which is amazing because the Hall of Fame ballot has 2 guys already from the era committee, Dave Parker and Dick Allen, elected. Has a guy who's pushing for unanimous in Ichiro Suzuki, so he's going to be elected. And then, CC Sabathia is well above that 75% threshold, and Billy Wagner was 4 votes short. So there's the possibility of a 6-man class in Cooperstown. Would be the biggest class since 2022, which was 7, but that had 2 era committee votes. So it would be a really magical weekend in Cooperstown, New York, if Beltran and Wagner can stay over that 75% line and make it a 6-man class, 5 of which are living, which was not the case in 2022. 3 of the 7 were living. So it would be really, really awesome for the sport of baseball. And I'm very excited to see, what happens there. Not to completely gloss over the guys that I think are going to be elected. CC Sabathia is one of 3 left-handed pitchers in baseball history with 3,000 career strikeouts. If that's not good enough for you, he is the 3rd black ace in Major League Baseball history to have over 3,000 strikeouts, joining Bob Gibson and Fergie Jenkins. And he's one of 19 pitchers in Major League Baseball history that has over 3,000 career strikeouts. And you're saying, oh, well, 3,000 strikeouts is nice. 3,000 strikeouts is a smaller club than 300 wins currently is. And I know over time that will balance itself out with the way the game is. But that is how elite 3,000 strikeouts is. The only members of the 3,000 strikeout club that aren't in the Hall of Fame are either currently pitching, Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, or are Curt Schilling and Roger Clemens, two of the most controversial candidates that have hit the ballot in recent years. CC Sabathia is not that controversial. He was a great teammate and a guy that has done a good job being part of the media in his post-playing career to kind of soften the rough edges that he may have had through his troubles with alcohol and, things off the field. But he was a fantastic pitcher, a great teammate, a guy that I would have loved to have on my team. And, was Matt Cleveland. His run with the Brewers will always be remembered. And then, finishing his career off with the New York Yankees, starting with a title and ending with a retirement tour where he, checked as an elite club within itself. So that is a very high-end baseball Hall of Famer, a guy that I'm glad is getting the support in his first year. Ichiro Suzuki, who is pushing for unanimous status. He came over to Major League Baseball from Japan at 27 years old. 27. It's a late start for a guy to make the Hall of Fame here. 10 straight years, 200 base hits, and a Gold Glove. First player in Major League history to start his career with 10 straight Gold Gloves. Nolan Arenado since tied that. 200 hits his first 10 years in the big league, so he got to that rule of 2,000 really quickly. But he broke George Sisler's nearly 100-year record for most hits in a regular season with 262. This is an all-time record there. And if that's not enough for you, in his big league career, he accumulated over 3,000 hits in the major leagues. Before you even get into his Japanese hits, over 3,000 hits in the major leagues, which is a slam dunk for most people. Over 500 stolen bases from 27 on. He's an inner circle Hall of Famer, one of the greatest I've ever seen from a right fielder. I can already see the promos for the class of 2025 with Dave Parker and Ichiro making amazing throws. This is an awesome Hall of Fame class. And that's before you even get into Billy Wagner, who's one of the most efficient strikeout pitchers in, relief history, who's going to get over that hump there. And Carlos Beltran, this elite switch hitter who was dominant in the postseason, a guy who never won an MVP, but won a Rookie of the Year. It's a great, great class that is sizing up here in Cooperstown for this summer. So I'm very excited for it. Other guys that would get my vote on the Hall of Fame ballot but will not be elected this year. Andrew Jones is pretty self-explanatory to most people. 400 home runs and 10 Gold Gloves. The only other players in Major League history to do so are Mike Schmidt, Ken Griffey Jr., and Willie Mays. That's elite territory right there for Andrew Jones. I think he'll be a 2026 inductee because he's trending really well right now. Bobby Abreu is one of the most overlooked players in the history of the game. A guy who, was a very, very good hitter, stole over 400 bases, got over 60 WAR in his career, a good amount of hits. He did everything really well. And it's not like a high-end Hall of Famer, but is well above the Hall of Fame line for me. And Torrey Hunter is about to fall off the ballot, people. Torrey Hunter is one of those guys we're going to look at in a couple years. And we're going to say, how did he not go 10 years on the ballot? Not only is Torrey Hunter one of the most liked, is also who has 350 home runs and 9 Gold Gloves. You can sarcastically say to me, as my buddy Jake has, what's the difference between 410 and 350 and 9? Well, it's about 50 home runs and 1 Gold Glove. But in the grand scheme of baseball, what is the difference? Is it that major? Now, if you look at the rate stats and WAR and different things, Torrey Hunter is not the candidate Andrew Jones is. And I'm not saying he is, but he's got more hits. He's got more of the actual counting stats that use a Hall of Fame candidate compared to Andrew Jones, who's a little bit more the analytical profile along with those 2 big numbers he had. Hunter, a Hall of Fame player, in fact, they fall off this year, and I think is a pretty overall. It's pretty shocking is pretty shocking, and I'm disappointed in the baseball writer. Appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in as always. Jake, Orlando, Hugo, everyone that was in the chat. Will, I appreciate you. Okay. January 21st, they'll be making that announcement that evening. I think it'd be at least a 3-player class, probably a 4-player class. So it's really exciting for the Hall of Fame. And that will, if you learn something, make sure you hit a like on the video, leave me a review on podcast platforms. It really helps the show. And always recommend the show, share the show.